What is up? It's good to see everybody. I'm your host, Shane Cashman. Welcome back to Inverted World Live. I'm joined by Alex. Alex is back. What is up?
Hey, Shane. Hi, everybody. It's good to be back.
It's great to see you.
Good to see you.
We have a really interesting, wild episode lined up. I'm really excited for it. I'm fascinated by religious sects and cults, and what brings people to them and how people leave them. Two of my favorite shows of all time are The Leftovers and True Detective, and I feel like a lot of what we're going to talk about today is kind of a blend of both, because there's some very unfortunate sexual misconduct, some really big depravity that seems to have taken place in this cult, but also in a larger scale. And that's in relation to True Detective Season 1 in particular. And then in terms of The Leftovers, for those who don't know, it's basically about a world that experienced a rapture type event. And in the aftermath of that rapture type event, all these people disappear, no one knows why. All these cults emerge. And after or during lockdowns for COVID, it seemed to me like we were living inside The Leftovers, because there's this massive event that took place that no one could really explain. I mean, some of us could. We knew what was going on. But a lot of people didn't know what was going on. And you saw various cults emerge, whether it was political or legit cults, as we think of them. Something super bizarre was happening. And the idea of the cult and joining one had been accelerating through that time.
Here we are wearing our white.
Yeah, nice. Shout out to The Leftovers. What was the name of that cult? Do you remember? Oh, they had a great name.
I don't remember the name, but we need our cigarettes and just be silent for the rest of the episode.
Oh my goodness. Great show, guys. I love that show. So, well, let's get into it.
Yeah.
Let's bring in Tami, Pacheco. I'm very excited to have you with us. Tami, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So I titled this today, Escaping the Cult with No Name. When you're in it, when you're in this cult with no name, also known by the 2x2s, also known as the Truth, is that something when you're in the cult you're thinking of? Like, are they thinking like, hey, we're the church with no name? Or are you literally not labeling it?
It literally, to my perception growing up, was called the Truth. That's what, and I was asked about that a lot, because like in school, I couldn't square dance. Like I would get a note excusing me from anything to do that they deemed weird or, worldly. And so I was constantly asked about that, but we were known as the Truth.
Can you describe what they mean by worldly?
Anybody. So the way the Truth is they follow the New Testament, and it seems to me that they follow it when it applies to whatever it is they're trying to make you do.
Right.
So worldly is anybody that's not in the truth. So we weren't allowed to play sports. Like I had a full ride scholarship to play field hockey, and the coach called and begged my parents to let me go to college. And that was, especially as a female. Females don't have good roles. We either marry and have kids and propagate the masses, or we become female preachers.
Right.
We don't go to school. We weren't. That's changed a lot as the times have changed. Some of the stuff the kids do today would never have happened in my time. We wore dresses every day. We wore our hair in a bun, very similar to the FLDS or Amish looking.
Yeah.
My mom made our clothes, made our dresses, and we just didn't associate with anybody outside the truth. And let me tell you, they're in every country, every city. Strangely enough, the closest thing I've ever found in structure is AA.
Really?
AA they don't own property, they don't own buildings, and they did. AA based theirs solely on making sure the egos weren't attached, that they didn't divert from getting people sober by fighting over property and money. But these guys got a whole nother thing. So yeah, we grew up not having very little contact with the outside world, just the people within our, city or whatever.
Were you as a child afraid of the outside world? Did they make it seem like it was a scary thing that would take you away from the truth?
They did try to. I was not. I was. So I my mom and my dad was 17 years older than my mom, and he was a preacher in the truth for some time. We know zero about how they met, what their history is.
Wow.
He was 17 years older than my mom. And my dad was a character. I loved my dad. I believe my dad, to some degree, was greatly conflicted about being in the truth. He was an Italian. He was like the Italian stallion. I very much have his personality.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think he agreed. But I also, like his brothers, some of them were very high up in the hierarchy of preachers.
Right.
And mom and dad had several miscarriages, I think 5. And one of my uncles, my dad's brother, Sproly, was a missionary in Korea during the war. And he told them to adopt. So they adopted I have a Korean brother and sister. And then, of course, like minutes after getting them home from Korea, they promptly got pregnant, as it always happens. And they ended up having 3 kids.
Of course.
So my mother had 5 babies. Like she had no babies, and then suddenly had just a house full. And
wow.
I think actually in a lot of ways my mom was really strong, and I believe 100%, and I'll say this over and over, I think my parents were really good people that just got caught in a thing.
So I want to get to that, but we should go back for everyone who doesn't have any context to this cult. Can you bring us back to like how this whole thing started? Because I believe it's like 100 years old, right?
It's really old, and Tate knows more about it than me. I have learned more in the last year and a half. I know that they're in Australia. I believe they've already had a 60 Minutes episode in Australia on them. So to my knowledge, this guy William Irvine, something of that sort. Their names, when I go back and read the stuff that's online, it kind of freaks me out a little because they're names from my childhood, and these people wielded a lot of power.
Right.
And so they meet. Their premise is that they go 2 by 2. The preachers go out 2 by 2, and they have no belongings, so they don't own anything. And when you're a kid growing up, you don't really think about that. It's just like they come. So we had in each city, there'll be like, depending on the size of your city, maybe 10 elders. And each elder will have like families in their neighborhood come to their house for meeting. So my dad was an elder, and I think we had 6 or 7 families that came to our house every Sunday morning for meeting, which consisted of reading the Bible, singing hymns, praying, etc. And then on Wednesday nights, they had a Bible study, and that would be at one of the members' houses, and it would rotate out. And it's very organized. It's really interesting for a church with no name, no paper trail, no nothing. Trust me, they are organized. And I look back, my family will never forgive me for speaking out. And I grappled with that for the last year. But my mom and dad are gone, and I have a lot of satisfaction now because I believe that where mom and dad are now, they see the whole picture. Yeah. And I believe that you look down and go, "Oh, Tami, we're so sorry. Right. We're sorry about the nonsense." But the way they structure it, like my mom, for instance, was in charge of one female worker and preacher. They call them workers, preachers. And she would get all that preacher's mail. Well, as a kid growing up, I would see my mom opening envelopes, counting money. And so it didn't occur to me until this last year. I'm like, they were laundering money.
Oh, yeah.
Classic cult, classic cult material.
Yeah.
So
said that.
So like, I want to put that on a shelf real quick because I want to come back to that. Yeah. But as I want to get more into like who these people are, they're not only a cult with no name, but like you're saying, they're a religion with no church, right? So the houses become their places of worship, and they travel to these places, like you're saying. And then going back even further to its inception, you're saying William Irvine, I think, and then there was like a schism within it, from what I've read, Cooney, right? I forget his first name. So right, and yeah, it's huge in Australia. I think Irvine was from Ireland, and it's expanded worldwide. I have, who knows if this is true, you know, because it's like believing in polls, but they say that it used to be a much larger cult, maybe up to 200,000 people at some point. And then actually during lockdowns, kind of the reverse of what I was saying in the beginning, it started to die, from what I'm reading, you know, but like, I think it's really hard to tell because again, like you're saying, there's no digital footprint unless it's from someone such as yourself, right? Someone who's left.
Yeah. So they're really sneaky about that though, because this is what I think, it became harder to manage. So they have like each state will have, when we start talking, not to segue back into the money, but these are just things along the way. We had a state convention out at Edgewood, which is like 30 miles from Albuquerque. So growing up, my perception was growing up that the people that owned that property were just really rich.
Right.
And so it was really nice of them to let us all once a year. That was where New Mexico's convention would be. And everybody would come from the neighboring states. So there might be like 2,000 people. And that was your place as a young person to go meet other young people and hopefully, you know, hook up or find them. When I say hook up, I don't mean hook up, but like if you started dating someone, the way you expressed that was you walked down to the corner store with them. And that pairing up of the walk
2 by 2
told everybody that they were, you were together, you know, just all this like stuff. So a lot of it, like I didn't really ask about, but every state has a convention somewhere. And what I've learned, like the one out here in Texas, we're talking big bucks.
Wow.
You know, and I don't care, honest to God. Like if you want to have a religion and make a bunch of money, I don't care. You know, if you're spreading the word of God and being good, who am I to judge? You know, certainly I'm a big sinner, but it's just interesting because the perception that I had growing up is so different from what has actually happened. So, and that's my issue with them all is like, be real. Be who you are.
I have a question. Now that you're out, though, do you feel like you're finding more about it than you did when you were in it?
100%. Listen, I was telling Tate, the day the murder happened, Tate accepted Christ. And he became, because we saw a demon that day. I mean, I can't even, we'll get to that story. But there's things that I've seen my entire life. Like I tried to tell my family that I felt like something was up with my brother. And my brother was like the golden child. And I loved my brother. I was really, really close with him. And so what happened that day in that house profoundly changed Tate and I completely in the trajectory of our life. And Tate, so all these weird things were happening. We start off on our journey. I went back out to Malibu because I was going to get help for PTSD. And like, just you name it, like we got out there, our car was stolen, our SUV was stolen with all of our equipment, all my laptops, all his musical. I mean, it's just like one shit show after another, pardon my French. And it started me on this journey about what does my life mean and what is the truth? How does this play a part in how screwed up everything became? And so things would happen like with Tate. He wanted a Bible. And when you're struggling to keep your bills paid, you know, to keep a roof over your head and food, you can't go spend $10, $15 on a Bible. And so a Bible would just appear. Like the most random things would happen. And I started seeing God everywhere. And I watched my son. We had to stay in our van. We literally were stranded on the side of PCH in Malibu. And we were in an okay place because there was a couple of surf camps that the guys all parked there and camped out. But the truth of the matter is Tate and I were in a van for probably 6 months waiting for the guy to fix our van. There's only like one or two guys in Malibu that don't cost, you know, $10,000 to do a radiator. And so I was at this dude's mercy and we would walk into work every day. And I watched my son stand on the side of the road and pray every morning. He didn't give a shit who was driving by. And I watched his conviction and I watched him determined to have a relationship with Christ. And I thought, what do I know? What was I taught?
Right.
And I wouldn't tell you. And I started looking at the whole process of the truth and all the brainwashing. Most of the brainwashing was more of God's going to get you. You're going to hell. if you don't do this, this, and that. And I was always I asked questions. Curious George, they used to call me. Why do I have to wear a dress every day? They're beating me up. They're bullying me. I was 6 feet tall in 7th grade. I'm wearing an Amish dress. I'm a moving target, And, I was a little spunky, a little sassy, and I had an attitude. Like they used to go, hey, stretch, how's the weather? And I'd spit on them and go training. I mean, that was me, right?
In your cult outfit?
I know.
That's a great scene.
I was just not most everybody, the way they structure it makes you so reluctant to have friends outside.
Right.
Because I wasn't afraid. I just felt like an odd duck. I didn't fit in.
I want to
other people were afraid.
I want to first of all shout out to your son Tate, who helped facilitate this. He's awesome, and I want to build up to this murder that you've talked about briefly. That was like the email that Tami sent me. I think the subject was cult murder demons, and I'm like, well, this sounds like a wild story. But I want to get just a little more understanding on what, like, I know you're saying you have like a real basis for what you were even taught in the cult, but and you said it was a New Testament based religion, so kind of like Christian, but did you consider yourselves Christian in there? Did you, like, what were certain things you were believing? Okay.
Non-denominational, and this is what we parroted out our whole lives. How come you can't go to the movies? It's against my religion. What religion are you? Non-denominational. We're called the truth.
Right.
So we functionary answers.
Right.
But I guess because the religion that they knew didn't strike my heart in the way it struck theirs.
Right.
I think in hindsight, looking back, it was all surface. So you marry within the truth. Mm-hmm. You're not allowed to divorce. Mm. If you get divorced, you can never remarry unless you leave the truth and come back. I always love that caveat. So I can just go out and sin a little and then circumvent the rules and come back and reprofess. They call it professing. When you stand up in a gospel meeting and accept Christ, you have professed that Christ is your Lord and Savior. I've been baptized in the church. I was baptized at Edgewood Convention, and when I look back on what the truth is, part of me wants to protect the loving people that I knew, my mom, my aunts, my uncles. Mm-hmm. But the truth of the matter is, all of them, especially the women, it's so shame-based. They made you ashamed about your body. Masturbation was like, holy snoggers. And like I was a kid. I remember being like just a kid, and this is probably a little graphic for people, but I was just a little kid, and I was getting ready to take my bath, and I was standing there with a teddy bear, and I remember like I rubbed myself with it. I had guileless. I had no idea what you know what I mean? At that age, you're just a kid.
Just like curiosity.
My mom saw me do that, and like her face went white, and she said, if you ever do that again, I'm going to tell Gilbert. Gilbert was the head preacher, and the dude was like about 6'4" in real life. So as a toddler, like all I knew in that moment, I had no idea what I had done.
Right.
She didn't explain it. I just knew that whatever that was, it was really bad. And if I ever did it again, he was going to get me.
I wonder if her fear has anything to do with the FBI investigation that's going on now.
Probably. And there was a lot of secrets, mm-hmm. Like I used to tell people, like I grew up in a 2-story house. There's the story the outside world saw, and then the actual story. And like my family was amazing at keeping secrets. My dad struggled with alcohol, and my brother's in AA. He's got 30 some odd years. Really proud of him for that. And then I struggled with alcohol and drugs in my 30s. And again, I dipped off about 40. And I think that the whole, the shame, like if everything in your life is based on shame, and my body's bad and I'm bad and my thoughts are bad and God is going to get me. I used to tell people, like, I've been listening a lot to Laura Sanger. and understand how she does like spiritual mapping of land.
Okay.
And I've said for years that I felt like New Mexico has a lot of evil in there because the Spaniards and the natives did atrocities to each other. And so New Mexico, like what's his name, has a ranch out there, Ghislaine, what's his name?
Epstein.
Epstein's
That's
got a
right.
big ranch out there.
Yeah.
There's so Bill Richardson, our governor, was always, I mean, he was on Epstein. So I think that New Mexico, for some reason, is some sort of home base, maybe for evil.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot of evil that has, and for some reason, it always crossed my path in a really strange kind of way. Here's a story for you. So we had Sunday morning meeting at our house, and we had a big bay window. And I sat we'd sit in a circle like an AA meeting. And so I'm bored. I must have been about maybe 10 or 11. And I'm just sitting there looking out the window, and I see a car pull up, and it's like right out in my front yard. And then I see a cop car behind him, and I see the cop get out, and I see one guy get out and take off running. And then the other guy stops for a minute. And all of a sudden I realize the cop has a gun on him. Well, I've never been around guns. So I'm like, and I don't have a TV. So I'm like, ooh, this is entertaining. And the guy stops and runs through our yard. We had like an L-shaped yard, and he went through our gravel around the back and then came back out, and he stopped right where he had started, and he put his hand at his pocket, and the cop shot him and killed him.
Wow.
Just, and I'm like, oh.
Wow.
And the cop thought he was going for a gun. So I'm like 10 or 11.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay. So I became a material witness at 10 or 11 because I saw it became like a thing. Was he reaching for a gun or was he not? Because the family then sued the cop. The cop later committed suicide.
Wow.
And it was this tale of just chaos. And they kept coming back and interviewing me. And so, like, one of the cops was super nice. He knew I was afraid because one of the guys had escaped. And, excuse me, when he would get on shift every night, he would come through and shine his spotlight in my window just to let me know he was on duty.
Wow.
And, like, I know, like, little things like that. Like, and then you fast forward 25 years and I marry a cop. Because it takes a psychologist too much to figure that out.
Do you think the cops back then had any idea that your family was in the 2x2s? Like, did they know? Was this a public thing?
I don't think so. I don't think they had any idea. I know when they showed up, because it was a crime scene for days, I know that they thought we were weird.